Once upon a time, there was a 10-year-old girl who lived in the city and was displaced to a small island community on the water, on a farm, away from her family, away from her grandparents, and the whole family unit she'd had supporting her, and was sitting in the middle of this rural lifestyle and shifting out of a very conservative elementary school to a completely different way of living. And my first day of class was really, really hard for me. But I had a teacher, Mrs. Kavanaugh, and there she is on the right. Every Wednesday, she'd put her wellies on. We'd put our running shoes or our gumboots on, and she'd grab her guidebook, the Guide to Common Mushrooms of British Columbia, and we'd go for a afternoon tromp through the woods identifying mushrooms. And it was a pivotal switch for me to be in a classroom that was nature-based, that was focusing on the environment, and my eyes were opened and my heart was filled with all the different mushrooms and the life, and I learned the names. And ever since then, I've been able to see around me, and I hike every day in the woods, and this is some of the things that I see. So these are my first photos, and I was about 12 or 13 of mushrooms on my farm, taken with a not digital camera. And I didn't even know what type they were, but they were so beautiful. I think they're boletes, or just a common ground mushroom. And then over time, I realized after I looked through all my photos, how many mushroom pictures I take. So this is witch's butter, locally. And then the Amanita muscaria that I saw up at the tea room at Stanley Park. There was a field of them, and they were huge, and they were so perfect and so red and so beautiful. And then we've got the oyster mushrooms on the old dead trees. And I think a bolete, a really large one, that popped up in the backwoods. One of the largest fungi I've ever seen. It was just beautiful. Yeah, and continue to go on my journey of understanding that a reference book or a way of life can seep into your whole soul. And from moving on to the actual pictures, I started to really look at the colors and the color combinations of nature. So there's a lily, and I called my daughter Lily. So the wild lilies, and then just respecting the frogs and the animals around me, and the greens. The greens are so beautiful. And it really spurred my love of painting and trying to represent some of the greens and some of the natural foliage colors. There's a black lichen against that green. It's just stunning. So in my journeys, and then I started doing some digital photography in a class. So I've got some amanita and some honey mushrooms in the woods and some flying squirrels. And then this big old stump, and I added his mushrooms around him, and animals and slugs and snails. And then for this project, I did an animation, but these are some of the still shots that I've got of Mrs. Kavanaugh and my classmates and myself walking through the woods, and just drawing the chanterelles and the shaggy manes, the honey mushrooms, the amanitas, the frogs that we hear around us, and just generally there's a squirrel or chipmunk yelling at you. And then in the spring, we'd switch from mushrooms and we'd move into the wild lilies and the wild plants and do that identification for the spring.